Hello, my name is Ava Agudelo Winter, and I'm the National Technical Assistance Coordinator for the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. Welcome to the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative webinar on curriculum development. This is the third in a series of 6 webinars on how to operate a farm incubator program and is brought to you by the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project in Massachusetts. We've been operating our project since 1998, and we're very excited to be able to bring this information to you today. As always, we would like to thank our sponsors, the Cedar Tree Foundation and the Clinial Foundation, for making this event and the NIFTI program possible, as well as our program partners, the Minnesota Food Association and the New American Sustainable Agriculture Project. Here's our agenda for the next hour and a half. We'll skip the technology training on this recorded webinar, and then I'll talk for a couple minutes about NIFTI, and we'll move on into our presentations. Daniel Unger from NASAP is going to give us an overview of developing curriculum for new farmers, and then all 3 projects will talk about our individual programs as case studies of how to develop a comprehensive training program for new farmers. I'm sure we could each talk for days about what we do, especially on this topic, since it's very core to the mission of incubator projects. But hopefully we can give you a good picture in the time allotted. And if you want more after that, I'll explain how NIFTI can provide you with ongoing learning opportunities and support. The slides will be available for download on the NIFTI wiki. The address for that is on an upcoming slide. Now I'm going to talk for a minute or two about the NIFTI program. I know many of you are familiar with this information already, so I'll keep it very brief. At the end of 2011, New Entry received funding to provide training and technical assistance to startup incubator projects across the country. You can see here our map of incubator projects that have sprung up in the recent past. We have over 85 projects on this map, which you can find on our website and wiki. And also do let me know if you'd like to be added to the map, because we are always adding new projects as they get started. Many of these projects have shared challenges, and New Entry and various other partners have come together to address the increasing requests for training and technical assistance around shared topics of interest. We offer a variety of resources for organizations starting up farm incubator projects. We just had our first in-person field school at New Entry and the Intervale Center. There were over 22 organizations in attendance from 18 states, and we all learned a lot from each other and had a great time visiting the sites. It was such a success that we are looking into doing another one of these next year, probably again in the fall, in October. In addition, here we have a list of upcoming webinars, and I'll be sure to notify folks of those as they come closer. We also offer a referral service for free one-on-one technical assistance, so you can contact me directly for that. We've had great response to that so far. Folks are finding it very useful to engage with established incubator projects, to learn from others' experiences, and avoid reinventing the wheel. We now have a wiki, which is an online repository for documents, videos, photographs related to farm incubator project operations and management. You can become a member of that if you'd like to. You don't have to. You can also just view it online. And we also have a listserv, which is just getting going, that you can sign up for. The address to sign up for the listserv will be made available at the end of the webinar. All of the project partners shown here are organizations who have been getting numerous requests for technical assistance in one form or another for years, and they have a lot of expertise. They signed on as technical assistance providers for this initiative. They also collaborate on creating these webinars, and along with you and your feedback, guide the direction of the NIFTI program and what we offer. Great. Now, Daniel Unger from the New American Sustainable Agriculture Project is going to get us started on our topic. Daniel, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Ava. So as Ava mentioned, I am the program director for the New American Sustainable Agriculture Project, and we are a farmer training program that works with immigrants and refugees in Portland, Maine, and in Lewiston, Maine. And we work predominantly with Somali, Bantu, and Sudanese refugees. We work also with a few other nationalities and people from Central America. So I will be talking today about curriculum development and how we approach the task of designing curriculum. And I'm going to start by kind of providing some overview of some of the factors to consider the sort of structure of different incubator programs out there, and then I will give some specific examples for how we do things with the specific demographic we work with. So, one of the most challenging parts about developing curriculum for any farmer training program is basically how incredibly complicated farming is, and that there really is no simple and easy how-to book to hand out. So for a farmer to be ready to go, there's so much that they need to know. Here's just a sample list of soil fertility, bed prep, plant biology, greenhouse management, weed management, disease management. The list goes on, and this list here is actually just a list of production-related topics, and there are so many other skills a farmer needs to have. So one of the first questions that you want to ask yourself is where your program fits in, and what are the things that you intend to teach and provide in your program, and what are the things that you may want to look for other service providers, so you don't need to do it all. Here's another diagram. In addition to the production skills, a successful farmer is going to need marketing skills. In the case of our demographic and many new farmers across the country, English literacy, financial literacy. Our program includes an aspect of leadership development, cross-cultural fluency for new American farmers, and business management skills. So again, it's a long list, and what parts do you want to do, and what parts do you want to rely on others to cover? The way that we answered that question is really kind of looking at three key questions. And the first one is who your demographic is. And here's the snapshot of the demographics of new farmers in this country. Second career farmers usually have savings to invest in starting a farm and to invest in infrastructure on a farm. Apprenticeship model isn't likely to be very helpful for them because they're ready to get going and may have some resources to do that. Young and educated farmers, often coming from right out of college and looking to get back to the land, usually are on the opposite end of the scale without as many resources to get started, but willing to invest the time and energy to learn on the ground. Farm workers with farm experience in this country. This is a picture from the New Farmer Development Project, which is one of NIFTI's partners. Oftentimes, this is a group with very strong production skills, but they may be lacking in other areas related to business management or farmland acquisition. And then there's the group that we work with, which is immigrants or refugees that bring most of their experience from other countries. This is a group that might lack transferable skills or financial resources to start farming. So now here are a couple of training structures of different incubator programs across the country, just to kind of give a snapshot of different ways of doing this work and how that might drive how you want to put your curriculum together. New entry, which has been on this call as well, is more what you might call a traditional incubator, with staff providing farm management on-site and the training. Minnesota Food Association is also a NIFTI partner. In addition to having incubator plots, they also have a working farm right on site that participants can work on or just observe to have a model right on site. OSU Extension has an interesting model because they were targeting second career farmers. And so the participants in that program work on a training site just a few hours a week while starting their own farm on the land that they already own. The New Farmer Development Project doesn't have a common land base. Production training isn't their emphasis, and they do that through program partners. The MACA Journey Person program, also here in Maine, relies really heavily on mentorships for most of its education and training to happen. And one last example, the Land Stewardship Project in Minnesota, their focus is really centered around whole farm management and business planning, and that's where most of their training happens. Participants learn somewhat about production when they do on-site visits as part of the program to other working farms. So there are a couple of factors: who's your demographic and what is your program structured like based on who you're working with, to try to figure out what skill areas your program will address and what fits your mission and vision. So I'm going to shift now a little bit from that overview to talking about how our program approaches curriculum and how we answer these questions. So as I said, we work with immigrants and refugees. some of the key factors that drive our curriculum decisions are that it's a group with very limited literacy and limited resources, and they're relatively culturally isolated, which is kind of a vague term, but what I mean by that is that they may not even know what supplies you get at a specialized store for agriculture, or what alternatives there are to trying to buy seeds at Walmart, because they're not even sure where to start or kind of familiar with where you shop for a farm business here. So our program decided that, kind of based on those limitations, that we really wanted to focus on production and marketing training in-house, because there would be a lot of things that we would do differently to address our participants' needs, and that we would look for partnerships for other key areas related to English literacy, also for business planning. And our mission is to assist immigrants and refugee farmers to build successful farm businesses that are consistent with their culture, lifestyle aspirations, and individual goals. So we really focus a lot on the individual person and what that person needs to succeed, and that has also driven how we shape our curriculum. So this diagram is how we think about farmer education, and this is kind of a classic diagram that is used in different models of education to talk about getting people from just knowing things to being able to apply them to being able to do things on their own. And so in this pyramid sort of moves up to scale of sort of more advanced ways to be able to apply and integrate knowledge. So our program is really driven by trying to get people toward the upper parts of this pyramid and really being able to analyze what they're learning, think about what's happening on their farm, and make their own changes in their field based on what they're learning. So the base of that is knowledge, but our curriculum is a little bit less about huge amounts of information and facts and more about helping people think about their experiences and make plans for their farm based on information that they get from us and ways of approaching their operation. So I'll talk a little bit now about some of the ways that we build our curriculum, and this will be a little bit theoretical, and then I'm going to show some examples from PowerPoints that we've done and worksheets that we use. So our program starts very much with student-driven teaching goals, and we meet with our participants every fall to talk about what priorities are for our learning goals for that year, and that drives our curriculum every year. So we adapt what we do quite a bit every year. We try as much as possible to teach from the student's context and integrate their life experiences into what we do. And that's been particularly important for us with our participants coming from such a different background. And I'll give it some examples of that in a minute. Then once our participants have had some experience in the field, we try to use that as much as possible in the classroom. And we follow up all of what we're doing with implementation in the field, technical assistance on the ground, trainings in the field, and also just working one-on-one with farmers in their field. And then at the end of the year and moving into the next season, we try to create a space as part of our training program to help farmers reflect on the year and analyze what is and isn't working. So this is a model that's more specific to our program and what we try to do, but my intent here is to kind of show sort of universe of options. And for your program and for your demographic and for how you choose to develop your curriculum, some of these may be more or less important than others, but I think each of them on their own represents a useful educational principle that there may be a few that jump out more for your program as something you want to incorporate. So now looking at some specific examples, talking about from the student's context. In our case, that was very much about how farming in New England is different from Africa and why farm systems are set up how they are. And we really realized the need for this because in our program we realized people didn't understand why they were planting in rows. They thought it had something to do with plant health. It has nothing to do with plant health. It has everything to do with reasons that we need to get more efficient with our space in New England and in most of the U.S. So we went all the way back to how farming is different than what participants did in Somalia. We're very lucky to have some of these pictures from an ethnographer who was in southern Somalia. Had a lot of land, so maximizing yield per acre was not necessarily an important factor. Farms were really close to the river, and the agricultural system was basically that the river flooded every year, brought in nutrients, washed things away, and basically farmers planted along the riverbank as it receded every year. It's actually a very sustainable model. Obviously doesn't really apply very well to an industrialized world full of dams. So that's a huge difference. Marketing was very different. This is typically a wholesaler would arrive on the farm and purchase all of the crop on one day. You got whatever price that driver was willing to pay, but that was all the time you had to spend on marketing. And the farm was really integrated into a traditional way of life. You weren't trying to fit it around getting kids to school and to doctor's appointments and other appointments. And so there was a natural rhythm that for our participants made more sense than trying to fit it into their lives here. So this is how we frame farming for our participants. And the differences in Maine being that you need to think about the fact that there's not a lot of land, that time is a major constraint, and that your customers have very high demands at market, and that the system changes as a result of that, and that becoming efficient in your use of space and time and finding a way to have high diversity for customers becomes critical. So that's how we started talking about rows and beds, the ways that we manage weeds in our row cropping systems, and also how cover crops end up fitting into a system like that. And that's how we ended up introducing why organizing your farm in rows and beds made sense. So that not that it was suddenly this way to have healthier plants than you had back home, and it's something you never knew, but that it's really tied to some specific constraints and differences in agriculture here from what people knew at home. So the next example is integrating students' real experience. And we use a lot of pictures in our trainings that are from our training farm. So I'm just going to kind of go through those here, but we spend a lot of time talking about these pictures with participants. How's the plant spacing in this picture? Is that too wide? Is that a good use of space? And really making it interactive and letting people see from their own fields how things look. So we use a lot of pictures in our program. And then I'm going to give some examples now in terms of supporting implementation in the field of some of the handouts and reference materials that we've made and some of the activities that we do that are tailored to a limited literacy audience. So this is an example of our planting guide that we distribute to people that has sort of dramatically simplified a lot of the factors for each crop, but just real basics about plant spacing and when and what time of year they go in. This is a picture of an activity that we did called the Time Management Wheel that was designed to help people think about all the different things they need to do with their time in the growing season and how that's all going to fit somehow. So the different colors of this wheel represent harvesting, cultivating, marketing, and planting. So farmers can think about how all that fits. And that, again, is sort of building on that fact that that time management piece is very different from a different marketing environment and a different production environment where people came from. Here, farmers are starting to build their crop plan by thinking about what will be in their first few weeks of CSA. So each of the sheets that you can see here is 1 week of CSA, and farmers are just gluing on the crops that they want to have with those little scraps of paper for each week of CSA. Farmers go from there, all working together, to starting to build these long strips to put together a crop plan. And here is one farmer's finished product. And this is really trying to take what would normally be a bunch of tight and dense rows in an Excel spreadsheet into a more pictorial form. Once people get out into the field, they kind of have that crop planning exercise behind them and start to lay their fields out accordingly. And here we can start to see those fields growing in the spring and into the summer. And this is in the fall with a few crops left and cover crop coming in. And, of course, the result at market with lots of beautiful vegetables. Here's just one small example of a worksheet that we use as a crop planning exercise, helping farmers analyze the previous season And this is just a very simple exercise to think and look back on the previous year, what farmers had too much of, not enough, or just right. And this is just a way to help people think about, if they're growing 40 different things, to take a minute and think about each one of those. Again, if they can't adjust formulas in an Excel spreadsheet, we need to create some other way of helping farmers think about how they want to change their production plan. And they'll take this worksheet into other crop planning workshops and into their seed order workshop and just kind of help solidify some of those decisions. This is an example of a simplified profit and loss statement that we made. So we moved the income to the top half, but it felt more intuitive. And you can see this farmer's, this is just a sample example of their income from several different markets, so CSA and wholesale, and then just very simplified expense categories of marketing, production, and gas, and greenhouse expenses. So this gets farmers' income and expenses and a bottom line onto one relatively easy to read sheet of paper. And this is the last example. This is an example of a record-keeping sheet for IPM practices, and it lets farmers see all these different pests at the same, different stages of their life cycle, a couple of different practices for preventative care for managing those pests, and this is how they record their IPM practices for meeting the requirements of EQIP contracts through the NRCS. So just to wrap up now, this is sort of questions that I encourage people to ask because curriculum development will look so different across all farm incubator programs, is what will work best for your audience and for the way that you structured your program that matches your mission. And just as a reminder, you think about where you might want to be on this pyramid, what might be more or less important for your program, but also how to make sure that your program is helping people move up to those upper layers of analyzing what they're learning and creating and implementing in the field. One last time, this diagram kind of summarizes the parts that we try to bring into our curriculum. Some may fit your program better than others, but I think each stands as a helpful goal in a training program. And I think that is all I've got. There are a few slides here with book resources and web resources, and this is kind of my short list of references that I have found really helpful to have on the shelf, and highly recommend building what your library is. So you can come back to this webinar. You can pause on this slide if this list is helpful. And then also a list of web resources. And this is actually a list of lists. So all of these websites have further directories of resources in them. So it's worth spending time finding your go-to places. If you're going to be providing technical assistance, what are the places that you might jump to sort of have as helpful references? So those are there to feel free to come back and look at more slowly. And that's all I have. So thank you very much. And I will be happy to be in touch with anybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And I'll take it back to you, Ava.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. That was wonderful. Now I'm going to discuss New Entry's training programs with a little help from Jennifer Hashley, our project director. So, Jennifer, would you like to get us started and talk for a couple minutes about how our existing curriculum was developed over time?
Great. Thank you, Ava. So the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project developed our original farmer training curriculum by starting out, back when we first started, with a participant needs assessment. So originally our project was based on a partnership project model where we had a lot of different service providers and other organizations engaged in thinking about beginning farmer training. And when we first started, it was the format was more like traditional workshop style, where we had a lot of talking heads from different service provider agencies speaking about different topics to participants on things like record keeping and production and marketing and other topics. So after we did those series, we decided it would be even better if we interviewed all of our farmer participants to figure out really what types of things they were struggling with and needed to learn more about. So we did a very in-depth participant needs assessment where we sat down with translators and other community members with each and every farmer that was in the program at the time and went through a very comprehensive needs assessment to figure out the types of information that they needed to learn about or could use help with, things that they were interested in terms of developing their farm business. And that really provided a lot of input and guidance into how we would think about the types of information people needed to learn over time. And then the next step of that was researching best practices and looking at other curriculum materials around the country. And one of the examples that we looked at closely was the ALBA model in California. And the Heifer Project at the time had funded a learning group of some programs in the Northeast to fly out to ALBA, meet with them, learn more about their program, and during that process they shared a lot of information about their curricula, and were very open about that, which is extremely helpful. I'd also participated in the UC Santa Cruz apprenticeship program, and they'd also developed a nice curriculum on both marketing and organic crop production. So those two sources between ALBA and the UC Santa Cruz program helped us tremendously have sort of the framework that we ended up modeling our curriculum after. The other really key component of that was co-developing the curriculum with an intern who was a tough agriculture, food, and environment graduate student who had a background in secondary education and brought a lot of skills and abilities in terms of curriculum development and adult-centered learning and participatory learning style to the way that we developed our curriculum in plain language. And our first go at the curriculum in our first year was to kind of grandfather all of our participants that had been participating in the program into the first class that we offered, which was an 18-week class held every week throughout the fall and winter on Sunday afternoons with 4 language groups. So we did the course in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Khmer. And it was a very interesting and good learning process. It was also extremely difficult to facilitate adult learning between participants when they had trouble communicating other than through the translator who then had to communicate the question and back and forth. And so it was a very slow process getting through a lot of the information that we wanted, but we were able to maintain participation throughout the 18 weeks, and it did facilitate a lot of cross-cultural learning between our different participant groups, which ended up being very helpful as we moved into the field trainings. But given all the logistical difficulties the next year, we decided to move to an English-only curriculum, and we did continue on and have continued with that, that methodology to do the classes in English. Moving forward, it has reduced participation by some folks with limited English language literacy. We've had people bring family members to the classes if they're having trouble understanding the material. We've also do a lot of one-on-one technical assistance outside of our training course to help people with any language challenges get through that component of it. So it did change our demographics quite a bit as we moved into English only. We continued through that. And then at about the 5th year of our training program, we decided that the 18-week course was really long, and we were really covering a lot of information that could be presented in the field and that was a little bit more advanced than people who are just starting out might need to know in order to really get started in their first year. So we restructured the course from an 18-week class to a 6-week class. So we took a lot of those practical skills components or more production-based components out and transitioned that into a 12-week skills training, practical skills training on the farm, and focused the 6-week business planning course into really concrete farm business planning concepts that would help people walk out of the class with a business plan instead of sort of mucking up the whole 18 weeks with a lot of production and business planning combined. So we focused it a lot. And then a few years later, we also, as our audience expanded to beyond just immigrant and refugee farmers, and we were starting to get a lot of different types of people in the room, we realized that without just focusing on people with farming backgrounds that were coming into the class, as had been happening, we were getting all kinds of folks with different types of backgrounds and thought that adding a component as a pre-screening prerequisite to the business planning course might help folks figure out whether or not taking the course was right for them. So we initiated this 2-hour Explore Farming course as a way to help people decide if making that next investment in their learning process toward developing a farm business plan was the right move. So that's sort of in a nutshell how we've looked at the curriculum development component of our program over time, and we've definitely settled on a farm business planning programming component as a requirement for working intensively with beginning farmers as a really necessary part of our overall programming.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So this is an overview of all our existing training opportunities and how they relate to the rest of our programs. As you can see, up here at the top is a class called Explore Farming. It's an introductory class that is a prerequisite for attending the Farm Business Planning class, which is in turn a prerequisite for access to the training sites, receiving one-on-one technical assistance from our staff, and for selling into the World Peas Marketing Cooperative. We'll talk more about how World Peas works in our marketing webinar at the end of January. The components here that don't have lines going to them are available to anyone who wants to take advantage of them. So, you don't need to take the Farm Business Planning class to participate in our livestock trainings, field trainings, advanced workshops, land matching program, etc. Hopefully this gives you a sense of the big picture of what we do. Now I'm going to go through and talk about each of the structured learning options we offer, and then we'll revisit this chart at the end when you have a better sense of what these are actually composed of. Explore Farming, as I just mentioned, is our introductory class. It's taught by our outreach coordinator, and it serves a number of important functions. It's offered for free to anyone who wants to attend for 2 hours on weekday evenings on a quarterly basis. The first and most important goal of Explore Farming is to help people who are thinking of taking on a farming enterprise understand what that actually entails. So, how much time will you need? How much money? Do you have the temperament? Do you like the outdoors? Do you like working with people, etc., etc. We use worksheets from the New England Sustainable Farming Institute's guide, Exploring the Small Farm Dream, to walk people through some of these concepts. Explore Farming also serves as an introduction to our programs. We want people to know how we can support them as they develop their farm businesses. So we briefly explain the progression of how a farmer generally moves through our programs in that class. Explore Farming also gets us some one-on-one time with people who are interested in taking the Farm Business Planning class. So we can screen them, and so honestly they can screen themselves to see if it's the right next step for them. They do have to complete Explore Farming to take the Business Planning class, and we are going to start requiring students to complete worksheets as additional prerequisites for the Business Planning class because we really want to make sure they've thought through what they're getting into. The Farm Business Planning class is really our core programming for new farmers, and we get between 12 and 24 participants for each session of this class. We run 2 separate sessions of the Business Planning class each year, one that starts in October and one that starts in January. Along with the topics listed here, the class includes an optional marketing field trip and a session on running livestock operations, as well as a farmer panel made up of farmers from the training sites that takes place at the end of the class. It really helps the students to see where people who were sitting in their place in previous years are at with their businesses. The farmer panelists often tell students to listen to what the teacher said, so that's nice for us, but they also help give them a realistic picture of what to expect in their first, second, and third years of farming, and how what we teach in the business planning class translates to the real world. The goal for students is a completed business plan, and about 50% of students actually accomplish that goal. Although we're working on getting that number up, a lot of people take the class and learn that farming really isn't for them, or they don't have the resources they need in terms of time or finances or what have you to make a go of it. We actually see this as a success because it prevents would-be farmers from investing too much into something that isn't going to work for them in the long run. We really want to set people up to succeed, and that means making sure they understand what farming is really all about. In addition to the 2 in-person sessions each year, we also run a distance learning option of the class, which is offered twice each year online and taught by a part-time seasonal staff person. That class has a similar fee structure. It's a bit more expensive, but we also offer significant scholarships for that class too, and the same curriculum, and it has allowed us to expand our reach significantly, both geographically and to people who don't necessarily have the ability to attend a class once a week in person in Lowell. There's a PDF of our first session student manual available for download on the NIFTI wiki, as well as a sample teacher lesson plan and some of the supplementary worksheets and documents I'm showing you now. If you become a member of the wiki, you can also upload sample curriculum documents that you've developed or used in the past. So as you can see here, you've got our title page, our table of contents, which explains each of the different sessions. And then we've got, for each student, they receive this packet at the beginning of each class. And they've got the class objectives for the evening, and then an agenda and what we're going to go through. And then each manual contains the PowerPoint presentations with note-taking, sheets next to it, and also any case studies or exercises that we're doing in the class so that the students can go and look at that. This is an example of the Instructor Manual. So again, we have learning objectives, but here we also have the materials that are needed for the class, worksheets that we use to bring as handouts, and then a class outline including activities and presentation or lecture narratives. This makes our curriculum actually really transferable to new staff who take on teaching the class with relatively little pre-lesson planning. And again, these documents are available on the wiki for download, so you can look at them and in a little bit more depth, and the full manuals are there, so not just the pages that I'm showing here. We have a lot of spreadsheets for students to work with, and we develop these especially to be useful and functional, but not overly complex or intimidating. We make a big effort throughout the class to continuously explain to students how all the components work together, so they see it as part of an integrated planning process. We also make it clear that these are evolving working documents, and nothing that gets put down on these sheets will be set in stone, or necessarily even be especially likely in their first year. But plans are so important for the learning process, for revision and going back year after year and see what you were expecting and then what ended up happening and why. That's really in a nutshell what the business planning class is all about. And these documents are a core part of that. So as you can see, we work them through developing an enterprise list. We work them through a cropping and succession spreadsheet where they get to see how they need to be planting things over time to be able to meet the demands of different markets. We have a crop planning spreadsheet that indicates what sorts of equipment they'll be needing, field schedule, which is about planting and harvesting, materials list, and then all the startup budget and financial documents. So we have a basic expense spreadsheet, a basic revenue spreadsheet, and then a basic cash flow that integrates all of these things into one. So we work them through that, basically over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. And we do a lot of one-on-one work with folks because even, making them as simple and relevant as possible, it still gets a little bit overwhelming. In a way, the farm business planning class is only the very beginning of our farmer training work. We like to think that it sets a good foundation, but beyond that, farmers really need to learn by doing. With that in mind, for farmers who graduate from the business planning class and have received access to the training sites, we offer a series of field trainings that cover timely topics to support new farmers as they get going and over the course of their first few seasons of farming. These field trainings are available to farmers who are not on the sites as well, so anyone who's taken the business planning class can take the trainings for free, and anybody else can take them for a small fee. I think it's somewhere around $10 or $20. So you can see the topics listed here. It is required that farmers on the sites attend at least 2/3 of the trainings, and the equipment and pesticide trainings are mandatory for first-year farmers. Obviously, as you might imagine, it's in the project's best interest to make sure the farmers understand proper use and maintenance of the equipment so we can keep it in decent working condition, and obviously safe pesticide handling is non-negotiable. All of these trainings are happening in conjunction with our one-on-one technical assistance, which I won't go into too much detail about since we're going to cover that in our webinar on site management in February. But farmers are getting one-on-one feedback from our farm manager as they go through their first few seasons of farming, and the field trainings are designed to provide a base for that, and the one-on-one TA is a supplement to the field trainings. So this is a sample lesson plan from our disease management and pesticide training. As you can see, it provides an outline for the instructor, again with learning objectives, materials needed, and planned activities. Like the business planning class, this makes our curriculum very user-friendly and accessible to new staff and interns who sometimes take on teaching the classes. We make a point of gathering research and field reports from our regional extension offices to provide up-to-date information for students during our field trainings. And we give a lot of handouts during classes from books and from websites. Pictures are really important, especially as you can see here for recognizing pests and diseases. We also recommend additional reading, books and web resources, and we do have a resource library in our offices that folks can use at their leisure to study more on their own time. We're going to move on to livestock training. It's tricky to try to integrate livestock into an incubator project because often farmers aren't close enough to the sites to provide the kind of regular care that animals need. We did do a pilot project 2 years ago on the farm site where farmers cooperatively raised 400 broilers, but in general the logistical challenges of our sites and people commuting to and from make it a non-tenable situation. So we supplement this in other ways because there certainly is a demand for workshops about commercial livestock operations. Through collaborations with other agencies and organizations on workshops on different topics, we've done livestock field days, which typically run from about 9 to 3:30 on swine, poultry, large and small ruminants, and raising meat rabbits. We are lucky to have an excellent veterinary school nearby, and we've also partnered with other organizations to provide these events. This is a really good example of using the resources in your area to meet the needs of farmers. It's very important to recognize that you don't necessarily have to be an expert at everything, but if you find that there's a demand and that farmers are asking for a specific skill set, you can find trainers or people who know about those topics and bring them in and do workshops with your farmers on those topics. At the bottom here is a picture of the mobile poultry processing unit that we built over a number of years. And we run trainings for farmers on how to use it. And then we have also community processing days where folks can pay per bird to slaughter their animals. As you can see, we have a large number of participants in these workshops. So the 150 to 200 participants are individuals who often return for multiple workshops. Our livestock coordinator also offers a lot of technical assistance to both program participants and as an optional part of the business planning class, and to the general public who often call in with questions about their livestock operations. And finally, our advanced workshop series. As I was saying before, over the years we do make an effort to pay attention to what farmers' skills or access to particular resources can be improved upon on an as-needed basis. Our role for these events are to find qualified instructors if the new entry staff doesn't have the expertise on a specific topic. We find funding to pay for specialized workshops, and then we manage the logistics of the event. We sometimes host the workshops at our sites, but sometimes also locate other places to have them. These events are open to the general public. We sometimes charge a small fee for attendance to cover the space or food if we're serving lunch. So now for a moment, I just want to talk about strategies for non-English speakers. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, we do no longer offer multilingual programming. However, our curriculum was designed with people who have limited English language skills in mind. We also offer a lot of opportunities for students to receive one-on-one help from instructors outside of class time if they're having trouble following the material. In addition, New Entry has developed an extensive collection of plain language guides over the years that cover topics such as selling at the farmer's market, applying for FSA loans, harvesting, risk management, starting value-added food businesses, and finding farmland. As you can see here from these examples, we use basic, easy-to-understand language and formatting to make the information we present more accessible to a wider swath of audiences. All our plain language guides are available on our website for download and will soon be up on the Start to Farm website. So, I hope you now have a good sense of how our curriculum works within the broader context of our overall program. This graph represents the services we offer to farmers. And then this is how our curriculum and educational components fit into our organizational strategy to create successful farmers, which includes both providing access to farmland and infrastructure, as well as developing markets. These pieces at the bottom here, our sharing of best practices and advocacy and coalition building, provide the foundation which allows us to continue to serve farmers and help them become successful stewards of our food system and natural resources. And now I'm going to turn it over to Glenn Hill, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Food Association and the Big River Farms Training Program. Glenn, take it away.
Welcome, everyone. This is Glenn Hill from the Minnesota Food Association. I'm very happy to have the opportunity and really appreciate NIFTI in organizing this and New Entry, Jennifer and Ava and Daniel. This has been a great webinar so far. I would like to present what Minnesota Food Association is doing about incubator farm programs here in Minnesota. Our mission is to build a more sustainable food system through training, education, and partnerships. Next. Minnesota Food Association operates as a nonprofit organization, and our program we call Big River Farms. But I want to touch on the history just because I feel it helps to set the context. The farm that we farm on right now, we have about 50 tillable acres. We're leasing about 120 acres, and we have an office and barn, and it's a farm that's set up. And this farm was set up by Morgan May back in 1891. And the interesting part is Morgan May made a lot of money out of cutting down trees and shipping them down the river. And then he realized that for the growth of our area, people need food. And so he picked out a spot that is halfway between the St. Croix River and the railway, which is inland a little bit, and he set up a farm because people needed food. And he writes in his journals that he had immigrants working on the farm. They were Swedes, Danes, and Germans. And they were not taking jobs. They were producing food and building local economy in order to draw more people, in order to create jobs. And it's interesting that 120 years later or so, it's still the same thing going on. Next, please. Our focus is growing new farm enterprises. We focus on commercial farming. We want to teach farmers how you can farm in the black, how you can make a profit after expenses, whether that is $1 or $1,000 or $10,000. We are not doing gardening. This is not hobby farming or recreation. All of the farms produce a lot of food, and a lot of this is given to their own families. They grow their own crops for their own families and neighbors and communities. But the intention is that we're growing for market. Next. We offer, as it says, classroom sessions throughout the winter season from January to April. And we try to tie it in with in-field workshops. We have a variety of different people who conduct the workshops. Our staff, our farm manager and training coordinator, conduct a lot of the classes, but we do bring in other people. We bring in other local farmers, and also graduates of our program conduct training classes. Next. We have a few principles that we have decided on. We focus on organic production, and we have found that our participants have said very clearly, like, this is the way we have always farmed, or we used to farm, but we don't know how to produce for market without using chemicals, but you're showing us how we can produce for market without chemicals. And we firmly believe that post-harvest handling and food safety are critical to the long-term health of setting up a farm business. You can farm organically, and it's not dirty. It's about the soil. But your name is on the product, and therefore you want to pay attention to post-harvest handling and food safety. Next. I think this is probably common across the country, but marketing is really a critical component of making a farm enterprise work. You can produce thousands of pounds on 2 or 3 or 4 acres, but if you don't have the markets, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So we are focusing not on farmers markets, we're focusing on other markets. It appears that most farmers in our program, they understand farmers markets. This is a market they're used to, but they're not used to how you sell wholesale, how do you sell to a distributor, how do you sell to restaurants, how do you operate a CSA? Everybody loves a CSA, you get your money up front, but CSA, running a CSA is an extremely sophisticated method of farming and very challenging. And we get into great detail with our farmers about producing, how you lay out your plot plans and what you're going to produce and where are you going to sell this. And it's having a purpose before you plant is critical. And we try to build up market portfolios, meaning having 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4 different markets in which farmers can sell to. So when one or another market doesn't do as good or does really well, it doesn't affect or have a drastic effect on your overall sales and income. Next, please. In recent years, we used to just focus on basic field production, but now farmers are more and more interested, especially as they get into 2nd, 3rd, 4th year of farming. There are more components to running a successful farm operation, and it's both appropriate technology and it's cutting your expenses. Buying in all your transplants is very expensive. Farmers have given us lots of feedback that they want to learn greenhouse propagation, but also greenhouse management. How do you manage this? And so we have decided that going into 2013, we're going to convert one of our hoop houses into a farmer's greenhouse. We do conduct a greenhouse training, and we do have farmers work in our greenhouse. We actually pay them 1 flat per hour of work. We estimate that at $13 a flat, so $13 an hour. And that is the practical experience component that is part of the training in greenhouse. But this year we're going to set up a greenhouse that farmers are going to manage it. We'll see how it goes, but that's the direction we're going. It also fits in with other infrastructure needs. How do you do your tilling? To sell on a larger scale, you need a cooler. We have a farmer who's going to, a graduate farmer of our program who is wants to do a training on how you set up a cooler and how you manage a cooler. Next, please. So, what our instruction and curriculum covers, we do the winter classes. We do them in St. Paul, which is relatively closer to where most of our farmers live. We cover 3 broad categories, but within these categories there are very detailed, there are specific classes that cover how you market for a CSA, how you sell wholesale, what are the principles of organic production, what are the organic certification applications, etc. Then we do 6 to 8 in-field skill sessions that cover those topics on the screen, but we used to do 2- and 3-hour workshops in the field, and the feedback that we get from farmers is that it's too long. Most everybody has full-time jobs. They have lives outside of our program, and when they have 3 to 4 hours to come out to the farm, they don't want to spend it all in a workshop. So farmers have requested, can we just do the chop, cut to the chase? What do I need to know here? And if I need to know more, I will come and talk to you individually. And this has received very good feedback. And we've also found that doing field trips to other local farms has been very beneficial. Not all the farms are vegetable farms. We visit livestock farms and fruit and berry farms, but farmers appreciate, obviously, talking to other farmers. Next, please. But I have to say, one of the main focuses, this is clearly a great benefit. It is also very time-consuming. We do a lot of individual coaching with the farmers. We don't work with hundreds of farmers. We work with farms. We encourage each participant to create an identity of their farm, come up with a name, if they can, come up with a logo, come up with print out a business card. But it's a lot of individual coaching and mentoring. We estimate we're working, it says here, 40 to 60 hours of mentoring with each farm. And this is greatly appreciated. One thing I'd like to mention here also is that we do 3 to 4 what we call farmer forums each year. In the beginning of the year, in the mid-season, in the later mid-season, and an end of the year all-farmer meeting. And this is where the farmers, we gather the farmers and maybe we have some food, and they give us feedback on what's working, what's not working, what they'd like to hear. And this has been quite a good way of receiving feedback from farmers in a comfortable setting that they can give us inputs and comments and suggestions. Next, please. So some of the details, we do charge farmers to enter the program. It's not free. It's subsidized, but we do charge $350 an acre. Farmers have between a quarter acre up to 3 acres, so that is prorated. There is a training cost. And farmers need to provide their own materials, their seeds, their boxes, their transplants. We have tools, but especially after the first year, farmers want their own tools. Within that fee, we provide the tractor work. We provide the main irrigation system. We provide soil fertility. We bring in organic compost. We have compost on the farm, but we also bring in a lot of compost, about 7 tons per acre every other year. We kind of rotate that. Cover cropping, fencing. We have a washing facility. We have a workstation in our office, which is adjacent to the farm. Everything the farmers grow is theirs. They can do whatever they want with it. We are one market. We operate a CSA, and we do have a few, 5 or 6 wholesale markets that farmers can sell to. We discussed this in January and February when they're making their plot plans, what markets they would like to sell to. And we have seen farmers are grossing quite a lot of money per acre, and that depends on how much time they can come out, how much labor they have to help them with their farming, and what kind of markets that we have set up and that they have set up themselves. Next, please. Yeah, as the slide says, since 2008, about 12 farms have established their own commercial vegetable farms to varying degrees of success, but they are farming. And currently we're doing a larger external evaluation, and we have found out that almost 100% of the farmers that have been through our program are still farming in some capacity. Next, please. Challenges. I think for our viewers and listeners, these challenges are not surprising. It's finding land, whether you want to own land or lease land. Many people like to lease land but would prefer a longer-term lease. The facilities, the cooler, the washing facilities, having a fence. We have a lot of deer. Equipment. Who's going to do the tilling, and how accessible and available are they to do the tilling if you're, for example, doing succession plantings? And then operating expenses. In Minnesota, we're quite fortunate. Both a financial services, it's a private business called AgStar Financial Services, has set up what they call a minority lending program, which has easy terms and easy application for small operating loans for minority farmers. And one of the farmers in our program was the first person to apply for and receive one of these loans. And then also the Minnesota Department of Agriculture has set up a minority lending program as well, with a pool of funds of about $250,000. So this is the beginnings of providing access to operating expenses and capital for the farmers in our program. Next, please. I think one of the highlights is this started many years ago. We're going into our 8th Immigrant and Minority Farmers Conference, and it's made huge leaps and bounds. We co-organized this with the Association for the Advancement of Hmong Women in Minnesota, together with USDA Farm Service Agency and USDA NRCS. But the conference has really taken on, in my opinion, a beautiful atmosphere. It really is a farmers' conference. They feel like it's their conference. Workshops are conducted by practitioners. We have simultaneous translation into between 4 and 6 languages, depending on what the participants' requests are. And it's just been a great workshop. A lot of farmers we have farmers coming from, I say here, 6 states. We've had farmers from more than 6 states now. 14 different ethnicities represented. It's really great. February 2nd and 3rd, 2013, in St. Paul, and we'll be sending out announcements soon. Next, please. One of the questions that was a component of this webinar is, how do you work with farmers with limited English capacity? This has been a challenge, where initially we worked primarily with Hmong and Latino farmers in the mid-90s. But this has, I'm sorry, the 2000 or mid-2000. This has started to change as we have more and more language groups coming into the program, and we just don't have the capacity to have staff that speak all these languages. So what we're saying is, farmers that need interpretation, they need to find the interpretation themselves. You can bring along your kids, your niece, your nephew, your cousin, whoever wants to come, that's fine. It's free, but you need to provide it. And what we've also found is it's really the classroom workshop and then the organic certification application is where they like interpretation. But the broad feedback that we have received from farmers that want to get into commercial operations is they want to learn English, learn the English of the business they're in, and so they want to speak English. Next, please. All right, some of the highlights. I think one of the highlights of our program is that we really get down to details. We go through seed catalogs. We go through laying out your plot plan, how you calculate your harvest yields. Someone wants to buy 5 cases of green peppers next week. Do you have 5 cases of green peppers in your field? Well, let's go take a look. How do you write invoices? and how do you space your carrots as opposed to space your beets. And I think the farmers really appreciate the details. We follow food safety standards. We follow organic certification. We try to connect farmers with other resources. MFA is not the end-all. There's many, many other great resources out there, and we actively try to connect farmers with other resources and let them make the decisions on who they want to work with. We encourage farmers to have at least 2 different types of markets, to not put all your eggs in one basket. And we provide funds for farmers to attend different field days, workshops, conferences, and we send out notices and call up farmers and tell them about what different events are going on. Next, please. And that is our presentation. Overall curriculum development, it is, in our situation, it is relatively fluid, but we have a lot of feedback from farmers. We maintain good contact with many of our graduate farmers, and they continue to give us feedback on what was good in our program, what things we could add to our program, and that is how we have developed our curriculum to this point. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, you are very welcome to contact me or contact any of our staff at Minnesota Food Association. And that's it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Now, I just wanted to mention some of the next steps you can take as part of NIFTI. Our field school in October is now complete, but we are, as I said, looking into developing another single or multi-day workshop or event where we can come together and learn from one another. If you're interested in that existing, please contact me directly. My email address is on the next slide. We have 3 more webinars coming up in our series. So after a break for the holidays, we're going to start up again in January with marketing, then site management in February, and transitioning farmers off the training sites at the end of March. I hope you'll be able to join us for all of those. And again, we do have quite a bit of free one-on-one technical assistance to offer startup projects through our project partners. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch with me directly. Again, my email address will be on the next slide. We also have new online resources. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a wiki where you can download a lot of the examples that Daniel and I showed today in our presentations. And if you become a member, you can also upload documents and curriculum examples of your own. There's a listserv, which hasn't been getting a lot of traffic lately, but you can let me know if you'd like to sign up for either the wiki or the listserv, or you can visit the links on this slide. And as I said, the slides are posted on the wiki, which you will get a link to on this slide here. So thank you so much for attending this webinar and for viewing it online. If you're viewing it online, please feel free to get in touch with me at any time if you have questions about our program or about incubator management or ideas about how we could better meet your needs. Thank you so much.